on a daily basis. That's huge, significant. So clearly energy access is a big problem. So when I'm saying, for example, that renewable is not the only solution, because I'm also conscious of the fact that it wouldn't be possible all of a sudden to switch 100% renewable now. Probably as we move forward, technology will appear.
Welcome to The Change Lead, the podcast providing leaders with the insight needed to get things done in a rapidly changing and complex world. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Connect with our community of like-minded leaders on our website, thechangelead.com. Welcome to The Change Lead with your host, Babatope Ipinyomi.
How is the world of energy changing? What is the future of energy? When it comes to change, it is easy to focus on change we can control, change we can put in a box. However, the biggest drivers of change often come from factors we cannot put in a box, factors beyond the control of any single entity. The future of energy involves change we simply cannot put in a box. To discuss this with me today is Tony Tiyou. Now, Tony is an entrepreneur, published author, and public speaker. He strongly believes in bringing power to Africa and changing the world through clean energy solutions. In this episode, Tony and I have a conversation about the future of energy.
Hi, Tony. Really glad to have you on the show. Welcome, and thanks for taking this opportunity to speak with me.
Thank you for this opportunity. I always appreciate that, reaching out and talking to people. That is great, just to exchange.
Nice. I think I have to start by saying I've been really looking forward to this conversation. I've been following what you've been doing online for quite a while, and I've been studying in my own way, not at your level of expertise, what's happening in the world of energy. And I know a lot is changing. So I think the first question I want to ask, and I know you're really into renewables, is this really the time for renewables to take off? Is this a false dawn, or is this real? And what's your rationale for your opinion in this?
Well, I think first of all, that's an excellent question, right? So just before I respond to that, I'm just going to come and say just a little anecdote. Now, the funny thing is actually, I remember when I started into renewables more than 10 years ago, people would say, "Oh, that's great. That is the future. That's the future." That's the answer I was used to have. So now when I see people now coming and say, "Oh, that's great. Renewable is the future." Oh, you must have missed the memo, actually. The future has arrived. It's actually the present and the future now. So that's kind of a response to your question. So yeah, absolutely. So I definitely think that now it's the right time to get involved into renewables for many reasons. Let me just some sort of a factual reason, because I don't just want to be preaching and say, okay, it's all subjective. So first of all, I said renewables energy, like solar or wind. First of all, it's important to say, when you say to take off, most of the time what we imply, for me, is new form of renewables energy, because especially in Africa, so we've always been basically using renewables energy without knowing. It's hydro. Hydro is 18% of the power generation capacity in Africa. Yeah, and many countries, basically the major source of power is hydro. So it was always there since independence. We've not realized it. But most of the time when we tend to talk about renewables, it's about the new forms of renewables, solar and wind. So if you're looking at that, solar and wind, for example, there are others as well, right? So they have become increasingly cost competitive in the recent years. Now, to be either at par with fossil fuel or even better than that. So just looking at that, even from an economic perspective, cost competitiveness, it's definitely something that we need to be looking at the moment. So that's for me the first reason why I believe, yes, it's time to take off, right? So the second reason for me is that there was simply a growing public awareness, right, about the environmental impact of the fossil fuel. So in particular with the climate change, and it's sort of affecting everybody in all the continent, including in Africa. In fact, Africa actually struggling the most, right? Although we're not the one who actually cause it, but we're actually struggling a lot. If you look at, for example, flooding, I know in Nigeria, we have some, obviously some big disaster that was last year. So Mozambique had it as well before, other places as well, Kenya as well. So in terms of agriculture, big problem. So all of that means that for us to be able to act against it, so we need to be looking at what could we do, and renewables energy is part of a solution. It's not the only solution, but part of a solution. Third reason is, government and corporation around the world, they have been setting up, ambitious targets for renewables to reduce greenhouse gases and combat climate change. And I believe that, yes, so people should be definitely aligning to that, because it's also some business opportunity, right? So the European Union, for example, they have a target of reaching, more than 30% of renewables energy consumption by 2030. In fact, it's much more higher than that, since the Ukraine-Russia war. That obviously got Europe to change their positions. But clearly, they're pushing forward, and African government and corporation as well are following suit. Last reason, fourth reason, there are many more. Let me just talk about four. Is the fact that renewable, it's strongly beneficial, right? If you look at more than the environmental benefit, you look at things like energy security, especially at this present time. We're looking at what happened in Ukraine, Russia. Definitely now, energy security has become one of the main issues people are looking at. The issue with inflations, right? So when you're subject to the volatility of the fossil fuel, definitely when you're looking at solar or wind, you won't have this kind of issue. And guess what? Especially in a continent like Africa, we have plenty of resources, right? So all of those reasons for me means that, yes, I believe it is the time more than ever to look at renewables energy. So hopefully I wasn't too long, but I wanted at least to give some concrete reason like that, so that people can see why I believe it's the right time to do it.
Yeah, I think I like that. I like the way you started as well. That renewables is now. It's not the future. It's actually present, and the data is there. The hydro is quite key. As in something we don't think about, but I think it's something that I grew up being aware of. But I don't think about it now. That you're right. A lot of countries, the hydro is a source of a lot of energy. And then the key thing, that cost parity, the fact that it's becoming a lot more cost effective, is key. Government's awareness, and I think the security. You mentioned something in that explanation, that renewable is not the only source, the only solution. Can you touch on that a little bit? What other energy sources do we need to be aware of and factor in this mix?
Yeah. So it may surprise some people, right? It may surprise some people, but it's fair for me to say that when we talked about, and for example, if we take the case of, I think I will speak a lot about Africa in this conversation, simply because that's probably the continent I know the most, even though I know as well, I have some good knowledge about the industry in Europe and North America and Asia as well. But let's focus on Africa here. So one of our main issues is energy access. The fact that we say that all the time, 600 million people, don't have access to electricity. The funny thing is, actually, that was about the same number 10 years ago. We got a feeling that it actually doesn't change. In fact, what don't change is the fact that the population growth is basically outstripping the electrification rate. That's why you see that seems not to be moving. So we clearly have an issue there, and that is obviously coupled with the economy that is dragging because we don't have power. For example, I was in Cape Town not long ago. I'm actually going back in a few days as well. So the phenomenon of load shedding there, which is just power cut in other countries, basically I think it's such a big issue, right? Imagine, for example, I was coming back from the conference. I was there attending a conference. I was coming back from the conference, being in my hotel, wanting to work a little bit. Then the cutting power, you have to wait 2 or 4 hours for power to come back. I could see how much of an issue it was for me. But imagine now for businesses on a daily basis. That's huge, significant. So clearly energy access is a big problem. So when I'm saying, for example, that renewable is not the only solution, because I'm also conscious of the fact that it wouldn't be possible all of a sudden to switch 100% renewable now. Probably as we move forward, technology will appear, and we'll be able to do that gradually. But at this point in time, because it's critical for Africa to get access to energy now, not tomorrow, we need to be as well open-minded and looking at what could we do, which means that clearly the solution here for me, it's what I call the energy mix, right? Where we're having a mix of all the different sources that we have, including the non-renewable. But the thing is, there needs to be trajectory whereby we're going to let's say a majority of renewable energy sources that have been used. And more precisely for me, I'm not against keeping on using reasonably, because obviously if you look at Africa, Africa has not caused a climate change, and Africa obviously contribution to the emission gas basically rejection in the atmosphere is very, very insignificant. So which means that to some degree we may be able to continue, providing, for example, there are some measures that have been taking place. For example, things like carbon capture and storage that could be coupled with fossil fuel in order to mitigate the solution. It is not ideal, but the thing is, I'm not looking for the ideal solution, because if we're looking for the ideal solution, we're never going to be there, right? We're going to be actually taking action in 50 years, whereby we need to take action right now. So that's the kind of thing I'm saying, that I also see, for me, nuclear has been part of the solution. So I know I may have some people not liking what I'm saying, but we also have to be sort of a little bit of realistic about the world we're living in, and looking at what can we do, knowing that for me, clearly, I see renewables growing in importance and clearly moving toward a system where, like I say, is hopefully going to be the dominant force. But this is the journey. That's what I'm saying. It's not the one solution right now, the only solution right now, but it's probably going to be the dominant solution going forward. But we can already accompany that with other things. And also, last thing I'm just going to say, energy efficiency. Like I say, for example, I say that to people, you may not be in favor of renewables energy, no problem, but all of you should be interested by energy efficiency, which is simply having a better use of the energy that you have, whether it comes from. Yeah, because you probably did not know that, because I'm also an energy manager, so I'm able to say that. So in fact, I can pretty much challenge anybody, energy that you use, you have at least 20%, 25% waste in there. The simple reason is, for example, people are going, they are using we're all using our laptop. Do you really switch off a laptop when you go to bed? No. But the thing is, if you don't switch off a laptop, what you don't know, basically your counter is keeping on ticking, right? Yeah. And that's how you keep on consuming. You don't realize it. That's waste, because you're sleeping. You don't need that. Unless you're an IT specialist, you don't really need to use that power at that time. So there are little things like that. So that's what I'm saying. Energy efficiency is also part of the response. There's a lot of energy that we're wasting, and the cheapest energy is the one that we don't actually spend. So these are the kind of things, like I say, when we're looking at that, we can see how we can rebalance things and go towards a solution. I believe that should be working for everybody.
Okay, I think I like that, the concept of an energy mix, being practical, being pragmatic, dealing with the challenges of the day. If we look at the journey you're referring to, that there's a journey to get to the situation where we expect renewables to become dominant, do we have the environment, the infrastructure in place to actually achieve that? What do you see? And there might be opportunities for entrepreneurs to look at this as well. Yeah. So what is the infrastructure that needs to be in place? How much is in place? What do we need to be thinking about here? Because it's all well and good to have the drive and desire to achieve it, but if the environment, the conditions are not appropriate, then you do need to take a step back and address that first before you move forward.
Yeah. Well, I think that's another beautiful question. You're absolutely right. So having the right environment, the right infrastructure, it's key and central, right? And there's many elements that come into play. But again, let me just mention some, because if we have to look at all of them, I think we probably need a good couple of days to at least touch on them a little bit. But that's why it's such a fascinating subject. So the first one I would say it's the grid infrastructure. We need actually to have solid grid that is flexible. Again, we should always remember, especially in the continent of Africa. So we haven't system grid that were built at the time we had our independence. It was at the time the population back then was maybe half of what it is right now, even more, even less than that. But guess what? Fast forward, economy has grown, population has grown, but those systems are still the same. We've just sort of fixed them a little bit here and there, a bit of a DIY, but they're still pretty much, so basically they're quite old, right? And that's why you see all the challenges that you see in pretty much all the countries in Africa struggling with the power grid. I give you an example. There is a big project wind project in Kenya called Lake Turkana, 300 megawatts. So first of all, on the zone, that was at the time the biggest wind project in Africa. I don't know, probably now there must be a bigger one in South Africa, I believe. Yeah, but that Lake Turkana, after it was built, it still took the engineer 3 years for that project to be operational. Why? Because they just couldn't integrate that into the grid. It was way too big. This is the thing we sometimes forget. You have some country, for example, country like Chad, Burkina Faso. Yeah, I think they will see the capacity of the grid maybe something like 400 megawatts. Or between 100 megawatts and 400 megawatts, right? So if you want to plug in a 200 megawatt solar plant, 200 megawatt wind, it's huge. That's a big disruption. So if you don't have the flexibility in place to absorb it, it's going to be it's going to spread trouble. So the grid infrastructure is one thing definitely that needs to be taken, and also because sometimes when you think about especially for power, because the one thing I also want to get people to understand, renewable is not just about power. Renewable is also about obviously heating, transport as well. It's part of a building, but I know most of the time we tend to just focus on the power. That's why some distort the conversation. But let's stay with the power for a second. So simply, what I was saying is, when we talk about the power, we tend to focus a little too much on the generation, but you still need to take that power to the people who need it. That's talk about the transmission. And the transmission system is a big issue. So if, for example, for a 10 megawatts project, you spend about, let's say, $10 million just to round it up, right? You still need another 10 million normally to make sure that the transmission system can actually transport that power. And most of the time, also, that's the big issue there because we have many losses. Why? Because the system is old, it's inefficient, it's not flexible enough. That needs to be looked after. And then after that, once you finish with the grid, you still need to look at the energy storage. Because like I say, if you look at the new forms of electricity, or new form of renewables, power and solar and wind, we know that they are also intermittent, meaning that at night there's no sun, and there are times as well the wind doesn't blow, right? But the question becomes obviously when we do have a lot of those resources, how can we capture power to make sure that we can use it when we need? That's what we need to make sure that we have systems that can store power, and that is very important as part of infrastructure. Now, you talked about things like EV, electrical vehicle. I personally don't think that it will necessarily blow up in Africa in the way it does in Europe or in America, but I think the two-wheeler electric vehicle will have a lot more momentum, right? The electric bike that I think can take up. Even for that, you need the infrastructure in place, right? Just like, for example, when you're using your car, you have your petrol stations. You know that maybe every, I don't know what, 100 kilometers, you can find petrol stations, stop there, refuel, and carry on. Same thing. If you have that your EV vehicle, be it a car or a bike, you got to find a way to obviously, when the power go down, you recharge it and go up. And also when you recharge it, you don't want to be getting at the station and wait for 8 hours for the vehicle to charge before you can carry on. Yeah. So that's the kind of challenges. But when I talk about those challenges, it means that those are opportunities for people that are clever to be able to explore that. That's the thing as well. I don't want to give a negative. This is not a negative perception. This is just stating opportunities that for me are business opportunities for people to understand. And no thing like the smart grid management system, that's fine. But don't forget, even before all of that, in terms of infrastructure, you will need a regulatory and policy framework that really support the sector, and that would encourage progress to happen, also investment to come forward. That's actually for me the first. So we need the infrastructure there. If we don't have it, we go nowhere.
Yes, it's an interesting one. If we look at staying with the topic of infrastructure, I like the idea of the two-wheeler bikes referred to there.
Yeah.
What infrastructure specifically do we need there? Is it batteries? Is it battery swapping? Is it charging stations? Or what are we talking about here?
I think at the moment it's pretty much open, right? So
Okay.
it's pretty much open. And what is the main business model? What I've seen, me personally, having been close to 2 or 3 people that are working this kind of business idea, I think the idea of battery swap seems to be gaining some ground as well there. Obviously as well, so battery charger, there's different things like that I've seen, but it's still up for grab. There isn't one that dominates the market at the moment because this is still emerging basically, and because it's emerging, there's many things that is good, many business model that is competing. But for me, what's going to be for me the EV vehicle for Africa. I don't think it's going to be more than Tesla, at least not now. Simply because if you're looking at the number of countries, especially in West Africa, that are using bikes, right? It makes sense that this guy would be much more interested to swap to electric before we do that with the car. Don't forget as well, the reason I'm saying that is because Africa is the biggest market for second-hand vehicle, for Europe and in America. So that means for Africa to adapt, EVs, it means that you need to displace that market, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon, basically as well. So that's the kind of thing. But the two-wheelers, I think it will actually gain momentum. In fact, it's already doing it. I definitely know already entrepreneur working on it successfully in Kenya, in Rwanda, in Benin, and I know there was also a guy in Nigeria, and I believe in Ghana, if I'm correct. So yeah.
No, thank you. Very, very insightful. If we go to people watching, listening, thinking, because many times you talk about energy, it can seem a bit abstract, these big topics that are left for governments and big businesses to deal with. What can people do practically to either, facilitate that transition or take advantage of the opportunities you refer to?
Yeah.
What advice would you give people to do practical?
This is the thing. So for me, everybody can get involved in the sector because it depends what role they want to play. Everybody can get involved. I give you just some few examples. They can decide that they may want to invest into renewables energy, right? And that for me, it's a beautiful option that people have at the table, because I always see people sometimes coming to me and say, especially people from diaspora, you say, I want to invest back home, but I don't just want to be sending remittances, right? I want to get something. I say, well, that's great, because the funny thing is sometimes you guys have associations for, I don't know, from Ghanaian, from Cameroonian, from Nigerian, blah, blah, blah. You guys, you working, you having a decent job, whether you're in Africa or even back, whether you're in Europe, even back home, but you have a decent job. If you put yourself together, right, you can actually build yourself a little fund. And I personally know always a lot of projects that are looking for investment, and I'll be happy to have a little $10,000 here, $50,000 here, because these guys sometimes, those projects, for example, they struggle to get support from the bank. And even if they get support from the bank, the cost of financing is so high, right? We're talking about double digits, meaning that these guys, it's not feasible, it's not doable, right? And sometimes as well, these guys, banks or other institutions will tell them they're too small. They don't have the size required for them to be interested. So that's why I'm saying there's clearly a gap there. That's why I say, for example, people can decide to set themselves and become investors. And in fact, if you know how to choose the right project, the return can be quite interesting, basically. So that's one aspect that people could be doing, yeah. But also they can decide that they can simply as well themselves create the market. Because, for example, when you see people having a lot of projects, installing a lot of panels, into people rooftop, that's because people like yourself, like myself, decided I want to have solar rooftop into my house. And you create the market, you create the demand. And because you create the demand, and that's how the sector is actually moving forward. That's why the public awareness, public perception is very important, it's key. Because this is, for me, what will drive the market forward. You can also decide, for example, in some countries or market where you can choose your energy provider, you may decide, okay, I want to focus on somebody who is actually procuring, a big part of his energy from renewable. So if everybody is doing it, guess what? Again, that's going to be boosting the market. So those are concrete steps like that people could be doing. You can increase your energy efficiency, saying that, for example, when I'm buying appliances for my house, I want to make sure that I just focus on the ones that are very much energy efficient. That's one way you could do it. You can use EVs if you want to, electric vehicle or electric bike. And you can also decide just to also advocate for renewables energy policy. How can you do that? Very simple. Don't forget that, like I said, people also vote, right, at elections. You can decide that you're going to be backing, candidates that have a program to boost renewables energy. And if all of a sudden people actually become very interested into that, and I tell you one thing, politicians, they love power, right? And they will do whatever the voters want, basically, if they realize that that's really what people want, whether or not we are in a democracy or a dictatorship, whatever. But if they really understand, if they really figure, oh, that's what people want, they find a way to serve people what they want in order for them to get what they want, which is power. So that's it. It's always like trading power, but different kind of power. You get the power, I get the power, right? So everybody's everybody.
Yeah.
So these are a couple of, I'm saying that smiling, but these are a couple of concrete examples. And this is the reason you will see, and thank you, by the way, to saying that you've been following us for a few years here. But that's the reason we do what we're doing. Because like I say, that it's also about educating people as to what the sector is, how they can get involved. It's not as difficult as they may think, just breaking it down to something that they can understand and connect. Like I say, everybody can request maybe having solar panel in their room if they wanted to. So you don't need to be an expert, but you can definitely be an influencer, an enabler of the sector if you decide to participate this way.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's good to know that practically everybody can play a part in the energy transition, in the move to renewables, be an investor, create the supply, influence through politics. So I think that's quite key. So thanks for sharing that. And it's quite a few. The few there I was not expecting. I didn't expect to see some of the examples you gave there. So that's quite nice. If we think about sticking to the topic of people being motivated to take part in the transition to renewables, one thing that motivates people a lot of times is the stories of success from others. If I think of entrepreneurs, many entrepreneurs, the reason why they become entrepreneurs is they've heard the success of another entrepreneur. They know that entrepreneur has been successful, and therefore they are motivated there to go ahead and become an entrepreneur themselves. Are there success stories you can share about renewables that can motivate others to take part and follow suit as well?
Absolutely. And that's also, for me, again, another beautiful question, right? So that's why, in one of the video live sessions that we do, so we have one that is focused more on making money, how people actually can make money with renewables. Because I also recognize that us, being in the sector, it's also a job, a duty, just to make sure that we demonstrate people how they can make a living in the sector. Because I personally believe people don't necessarily go to oil and gas because they love it. Look, it's all dirty, right? They get dirty there. But what they love there is like they know that they make a lot of money. So if you really also want to compete something, just show them that, oh, there's another way you can also make a lot of money. It's not as dirty if you want to, right? So that's why it's important to say. So basically, these examples that you're talking about is great. It's absolutely fundamental. So just to give two specific examples, people that I've worked with in the past. So there's a company, for example, called Utility in South Africa. They are a solar supplier, so installing solar solutions for businesses, but also homeowners, right? And at the moment, the market is booming because the South African market now is booming. But I remember when they came to me 2 or 3 years ago, they were barely starting, and they were bootstrapping any young entrepreneur. So we decided to work together. So obviously, I took them as a client. So help them like we know what to do with our client, get more visibility, get more leads and sales, and helping us to attract some funders. And like I say, yeah, the guy was really struggling because at the time he had a very nice, decent job, working for a big firm. He decided to drop it just to focus on his idea, and he's a very clever guy, I have to say. But suffice to say that now the guy is like I say, he's doing extremely well. Recently he was in London just to meet a number of entrepreneurs because he was invited there. And then yeah, so like I said, since we worked together, now he's doing extremely well. He's been recruiting a lot of people. So that's an example of a successful story that we had. And I'm pretty much sure if you talk to him right now, you ask him to go back to his old job. That's no not a question anymore, right? So that's one example. Another one, so it's again another gentleman. This guy, pretty much same kind of story. So worked for a firm, wanted to become a project developer. So it's actually one of the first guy that I trained. That I trained him into the sector. So how to become a project developer. So how the industry works. So we worked together for a few years. Now he has become a partner, and then he has a company called Energies, and they operate into Central Africa. So long story short, now not only operates in Central Africa with his base in Cameroon, but now he's opened up 2 other subsidiaries, one in Cote d'Ivoire, another one in Uganda, right? So just because he was bold enough to make the step, obviously, just the key thing for me, you want to make sure that you go and work with people that have good knowledge of the market and of the sector that can show you how to avoid some mistakes that for me are very very costly. And then if you can do that, yes. So obviously it's hard work like anything, I have to say. But yeah, but it's absolutely possible and doable. So those are two examples that I can mention. But there are others. There are others. But that's why again I say so. Um, um, when we're doing when we're doing our various webinars and all, that's really because for me it's about breaking it down to people. Usually, like I say, so there are 3 types of people. You have investors, they have money, they want to invest their money into the sector, then they say no. How to invest it, they need some insight. We definitely want to talk to them. You have also business owners, they want to decarbonize their industries, making less reduce the amount of pollution that they contribute into. They basically have the will, but they don't know how to do it. Definitely we will speak to them. The last one is a professional. So either want to get into the industry or want to launch his business, as it's a little bit scared, has some questions, don't know where to go. Definitely as also by listening to us, like I say, so they hopefully will pick up a few things here and there. So we always make sure that in the topic that we tap into, we serve those three different groups. So yeah, so that's just some example, as I also
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, nice. I think it's good to know that you can be successful, you can achieve a lot in this field. Like you said, the reason why people are going into oil and gas, which you explained, is they're going there to make money. And it's key that people know that you can be successful, you can and make a lot of money in renewables. And I think also you can be fulfilled if it's something that you're interested in and passionate about. That's what you really want. You want to enjoy it. You want to be able to feed your family. You want to be able to, make a good, decent living from it, but also feel fulfilled in what you're doing. So I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
those good.
Let
Yes.
me add a little thing here. Sorry for cutting you. Just want to
No worries.
I actually absolutely want to add that. Just to give a tip, because I like to give people some concrete tip that you can use. I usually say, if you want to make money, follow the money. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's so important to understand. Like I say, you said, people, you need to have a global understanding how this industry works. Renewables energy is part of the energy, which is part of the economy. So that's why you need to have that broad perspective. I don't know if you probably seen that I've launched a podcast to talk about what I call renewables in action. That's actually what I'm displaying there. And the various episodes that we've done, we have one that you're releasing these days. It's about tapping into that. When I say follow the money, understand how this sector works, understand where are the key markets, understand where people are investing and what are they investing to. Once you have this understanding, now all you have to do is, okay, if this is where people go to invest, this is what they're investing into, let's look at what I have as a skill. How can I offer my skill in that area so that I'm part of that equation and money also comes to me? That's what I'm saying. For example, if you realize that, okay, people saying that, okay, all of a sudden they're creating a big project in, I don't know, Burkina Faso, they want to build this corridor of solar plant and blah, blah, blah. Maybe asking yourself, okay, so if they build that, that's the policy. Now, are they going to be able to find people with the right skills, that maybe know this market? If not, so that means, hey, that could be an opportunity for me. And for me now to connect with that, just look and find out those people advertising those projects. Where do they usually hang out? If they say, for example, they in this conference, the other conference, just go in those conference. That's how you're gonna bump across them. Start talking to them. So this is this kind of analysis. That's what I'm saying to you. It's not that rocket science as long as you know what you're looking at. And like I say, for me, the easy tip is follow the money. Look at where the money is going, find a way to be in that equation. So,
I like that. Follow the money. I think that's a very, very good advice for many things actually. I think you've shared a lot. I think it would be good for our audience, just in closing, if you share a little bit about yourself, any final words, what you do, and how people can reach out to you. I think that would be quite helpful.
Excellent. Thanks for that. So, I find it quite original. Usually, people will ask me that at the beginning, but that's good. That's good. That's good because this way people don't forget about what I'm going to say. So, obviously, I call myself as an entrepreneur. So, but before an entrepreneur, obviously, I'm a father. I'm a husband, and I'm an African, very very proud African, for sure. And then I've started this journey more than 10 years ago when I attended a conference. It was in the UK talking about the electrification of Africa. And a great conference, but one image that really changed the course of my career and my life, which was that satellite image showing the distribution of power across the globe. And that was the first time I realized how much of the problem it was for Africa, because that was the only continent that was dark. And believe me or not, but that was the first time I saw that picture, right? And having grown up in Cameroon, I didn't know it was that bad because that's what I was used to, right? So it's when you go and get confronted to, let's say, a different scenario situation, then you realize, oh, actually there's something not quite right here. And it shocked me at that point. I was really angry, but I don't know what happened, but I decided I want to be part of the solution. I wanted to do something. And that's how I got interested into energy and then renewables energy, because I also understood that there was clearly a problematic, the issue of climate change, right? I know we need the power. Now we have some choice, either dirty power or clean power. So I decided to focus more on the clean power side. So I had to train myself into the industry because I come from automotive. At the start, I'm an automotive mechanic, automotive engineer. I know nothing about power if it's not power for the vehicle. So I trained myself there. So invested a lot into the industry to train myself, get myself up to speed. So worked with a couple of companies before finally establishing my company, Renewable in Africa. Even renewables in Africa has been a little bit of a journey, but all entrepreneur will tell you that, right? What you start with is definitely what you're going to end up with in the end. So we've seen that as well. So long story short, we now have a business whereby what we do, we have two main mandates. Our first mandate is to be a media platform raising awareness about renewables energy across the continent. We are serving clients and we are helping them to get more visibility for their products or services, get more lead and get more sales. At the end of the day, what they want is the sales. So that's what we really help it up with. We do that to our flagship program, which is the awareness program, which is a comprehensive approach in order for them to raise awareness about the products and services and get the sales that they're looking for. And our second activity is to be a developer of renewables energy projects, like especially a solar rooftop. It's not as big as the first mandate, but it's just something that we do because, just to make it simple, as an engineer, I always like to think that I don't only preach, but I also do. Yeah, or I do what I preach. So that's essentially what we do. And people want to reach out to me, yeah, absolutely. They can reach out to me. The fastest way, it's probably on LinkedIn, or they can write to me at tony@renewablesinaafrica.com. It's that simple. And then I think we have multiple, because we do our best to make sure that we're present on as many platforms as possible. The latest was always the podcast that we launched a couple of months ago. Yeah, that's really because we want to reach out to as many people as possible. So and obviously having the opportunity to come to a platform like yours, it's a blessing. And as we're talking about what people can do to participate in renewables energy, is just simple. Share this platform. share this. Like I said, it takes 2 seconds. Yeah, because you never know. You share that to somebody in your network. This may be the information he's been looking for months, for years. So just sharing what we're doing here. Make sure that what Babs and I talking about. You just if you read that lazy, you can't be that lazy so that you can't actually
just to share. Yeah, I think I'll use a phrase you said, and that's part of the solution. Be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Part of the solution. Just share what you're doing. Tony, you've provided a lot of insight. There's a well of knowledge. What I'll have to do is, in the show notes, in the description, I'll make sure that your LinkedIn profile and your website, your email address you mentioned are available, so anybody can reach out to you. Thanks for generously sharing your insights, your thoughts. Thanks for your time. It's been really, really good. We'll definitely stay in touch. It would be good to see the more projects that you're working on. So thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for the platform, for the opportunity. Like I say, we don't take it for granted, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to my conversation with Tony. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts. A review will help others find the podcast. I'd also like to invite you to continue the conversation on our website, thechangelead.com. Our free community website provides a platform to share and discuss the challenges of leadership and change with fellow professionals. So, check out our website, thechangelead.com, today to join the conversation. Check out the show notes for details on how you can contact today's guest, Tony. Also, as always, please don't forget, like, comment, review, and subscribe. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day and see you next time.